Today I thought I'd show you how we're hardening off tomatoes differently this year and how those differences allow us to harden off tomatoes earlier and easier than ever before. Hey Oscar, let's do it. This is the first year we've had this shelf on top of our upright cold frames, and it makes it possible for us to get our tomatoes outside here in the hoop house and harden them off early under cover. We typically don't start hardening off tomatoes until mid-May, and that's when temperatures at night typically don't dip much below 50 degrees Fahrenheit. But those conditions are met about 3 weeks earlier than that here in the hoop house. And that allowed us to get these tomato plants outside 3 weeks earlier when the plants were still small. And what we found was that the small plants, perhaps because of their limited surface area, hardened off much faster and much easier. Though these small plants have shown no signs of stress hardening off here in the hoop house, when we bring out much larger tomato plants in mid-May, they definitely are stressed by that. And we have to introduce them to outside conditions very gradually. Even 2 or 3 hours in the shade on their first day outside in mid-May stresses out larger plants, and you can tell because they droop and they just generally don't look very happy. And that's even when I have them under cover. And because they're so stressed, we have to introduce them to outside conditions very gradually. Gradually increase the amount of time they spend outside and gradually increasing the amount of sunlight that they get. But we had a very different experience with these smaller plants here in the hoop house. Originally, I wasn't even planning on hardening off these plants early, but last weekend I was working out in the garden. It was a sunny day, it was nice and warm in the hoop house, and I decided let's bring the tomatoes outside and see how they do. And I can check on them from time to make sure they're okay. So I checked after an hour, they were fine. After 2 hours, they were still fine. 3 hours, no signs of stress whatsoever. So I decided to just leave them there the rest of the day. I went inside, I was done with my work, and I just came out in the evening to bring them inside before the night, just to be on the safe side. And because they did so great on the first day, I decided to bring them outside for the whole day on the second day and just bring them in at night. And again, the plants did fine. And after that, I decided I'd only bring the plants inside if I thought the temperature here in the hoop house would dip below 50 degrees. And I didn't think it would. I've been monitoring temperatures here in the hoop house and outside for years, so I have a pretty good idea of how cool it will get in here, knowing what the expected low will be. So I left the tomatoes out all day, 24 hours, and I continued to do so until last night when the forecast called for temperatures close to freezing. So my plan going forward is to keep the tomatoes outside in the hoop house 24/7 unless I suspect the temperature will dip below 50 degrees. That's rarely a problem during the day. It's only 44 degrees outside now, but as you can see, it's like summertime in here. So it'll only be at night on occasion that I'll have to bring the tomatoes inside. And of course, when it gets warm enough outside, I'll transition the tomatoes from the hoop house to the outside garden. Now this is working so well for tomatoes, I'm thinking about trying the same thing with peppers. Our pepper plants are also quite small at the time. So I thought I'd share this with you today. Please let me know in a comment if you've also noticed that smaller tomato plants harden off faster and easier than larger plants, because this has made a big difference for us, and I'll never harden off tomatoes like I used to again. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe for more videos on how to grow a lot of food on a little land without spending much or working harder than you have to.